Good afternoon, friends. I am joined today by interdisciplinary artist, researcher, and educator, Audrey-Anne Bouchard. Nice to meet you, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Audrey-Anne, we're going to talk about a very interesting piece of performance art that's coming to Toronto in the next few days. But before we start with that discussion, maybe we can talk a little bit about you. I know that you started as a stage director and lighting designer, but what kind of got you interested in working with the theater arts?
Yes, so basically I studied visual arts at first, but I was also doing on the side, dance, modern dance. And I felt that working as a visual artist was much more of a solitary activity, and I missed the teamwork of working in a performance setting. So I thought, how can I join those two passions that I have for visual arts and performance together? And I chose to study stage design at Concordia University in Montreal with the hope that I would create set and lighting design for dance and theater performances.
Mm-hmm. And you did work in that field for a while as well, did you not?
Yes, actually, I still work in dance and theater. That's my main thing. So I worked as a lighting designer for 15 years, and I'm still an active lighting designer. I teach that at the sometimes I coach lighting design and production at the National Theatre School of Canada.
Excellent. So my understanding in part of my research is that your career shifted a little bit because of a vision condition that you're living with now. And I think it's called Stargardt's disease, where, correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you have central vision, or you lack central vision and have peripheral vision?
Exactly. So it's a degenerative disease that affects central vision. So so slowly my central vision is being lost, and then I only function with my peripheral vision in both eyes. So I was diagnosed with that when I was 17. So when I started working in theater, I already had this, but when you learn about a diagnosis like that, at first I was thinking, well, I'll just pursue what I already started studying into visual arts and all that. And then with the years and being more comfortable with dealing with this, I thought, okay, how can I use this specific condition that I have to revisit the art that I do? And it led me to question myself, how do people who are completely blind perceive an experience of dance and theater? Like what is it that that community, how do they experience that art form, and how can we make it accessible?
Thank you for mentioning that, because I noticed in something I was reading that you created, I think it's a program, or I don't know what you would call it, but en français it's Au-delà du Visuel. How would you describe that? Is it a process, a way of creating art for visually impaired people?
Absolutely. I think now at first it was a research project that I titled Au-delà du Visuel, Beyond the Visual. So the idea was really to gather a team of different artists together. There were dancers, actors, writers, designers, sound and set designers. And we thought, okay, let's just explore together. How can we create and communicate dance and theater beyond that visual relationship that prevails in the performing arts? And then that team, we started working together in 2016, and we're still working together now in 2024. So it became more the name of our collective. And we are creating experiences that are beyond the visual, specifically designed for an audience living with low vision.
That's so great to hear, because often someone like myself who is able-bodied and my vision is not bad at all, even if I wear glasses, we tend to forget that the experience will differ whether somebody can hear properly or not, or see well or not. So talk to me about Camille. Camille is coming to Toronto. Camille, the story is coming to Toronto's Beyond TO series. And but you already had a production of it. That's because it started in 2019. What was that process like with your collective in creating this story?
Absolutely. So yes, we're coming. I'm now speaking to you from Theatre Passe-Muraille in Toronto. We're setting it up today, so we're here, and it's going to open May 10th. Basically, after when we started this research, I told you about with the team, we were thinking, okay, what is it that we're going to create? Are we going to create a performance? And it became clear soon in the process. We worked with a group of experts, of consultants living with different visual impairments, and we wanted them to give us their ideas and feedback on what we were doing. And in order to be more interesting, I felt early on that it needed to be an immersive performance. So we invite the audience to sit on stage in the middle of the action with us, so they get an idea of what is the set, what is the space. And at first it was more like sound, poetic, dance, and then we realized that the community of people who are blind and live with low vision told us that it would be easier if there was a story that would guide us through that experience. So what we did is we developed different tableaus that we felt were interesting, using different sensorial stimulations. It's a multi-sensory piece. And we put all those tableaus together thinking what story or can we tell to accompany this experience we created. And that's how we came up with the story of Camille, who is basically, it's the story, it's actually the story of Pierre, who was a childhood friend to Camille, and the show begins with Camille's departure, and then it's Pierre's journey on accepting that loss of a friendship, and for him it's hard to create relationships with new people. So we're kind of following him through that journey where he's trying to create ties with new people. And basically the relationship that we develop, because it's one-on-one, so there's one performer per spectator, and the audience is blindfolded or wearing a blind, or they don't need to be because they're blind. So they're learning to also trust their guides through the experience, just like the character of Pierre, who's learning to trust new people as well. So it mirrors a little bit the format.
That's very interesting because it's going to, so my understanding is that there's a limit to audience members being to about 6 people. So it really is allowing us to sort of
exactly
be
in close proximity. So it's an intimate experience. Yes.
So, maybe you've put this production together before and you presented to various audiences already. Can you talk a little bit about whether anything has changed over the course of time? And I'm also curious about reactions from audience members that have sort of stayed with you or have been very interesting for you.
Absolutely. So basically we premiered in 2019, and at that time the performance was much more of a tactile experience because we were guiding the audience through different set areas, I might say. There were different zones, and it was a bit more like a pathway to follow in the set. And then the pandemic happened, so we had to rethink a little bit the framework, and we created a version that was COVID friendly, because we wanted to keep offering dance and theater to the blind community during the pandemic as well. So it's a version where people are sitting on chairs throughout the experience. So there's less of a being guided in the set, but they're still sitting on stage in the middle of the action, and the action is happening all around them. And we've been able now to kind of reintroduce some contact. So it's kind of a compromise, you know, a bit of a mix of all our good versions, the best of all the versions in one. And what's particular, well, you know, first it was a production in French. And in 2021, we did a tour in French. And in 2022, we had the great opportunity to work with an English translator, Alexis Diamond, who really elevated the text as well with her insight and translation work. And now it's going to be the first time that we do we do performances in French and in English in the same series of you know, presentations. So we have one cast that's bilingual. So you'll hear, if you come to the English performances, you'll hear Francophone actors speaking English. And if you come to the French, you'll hear Anglophone actors speaking French. But it was also part of our wish to make art accessible, that we could offer it in both languages as well.
That's really great. I'm curious about what, if any, are the difference in terms of experiences for people who are visually impaired or have low vision versus somebody like me who's going to have to wear the blindfold and just be trusting of the experience.
Absolutely, it's a really good question. So for people who are blind, it's for them it's easier to you know, enter the story and the experience, because they're not dealing with an extra challenge of, okay, now I have to you know, focus more on my other senses. That's their daily experience. So for us who are partially sighted or sighted, it's a bit more tricky. That at first we have to put on the blindfold. That first you're dealing with, you know, being more aware of your other senses. But the experience is designed so that there's a preparation period where we're all together. We put on the blindfold early when you come to the theater. I play the credits of the show in an audio format, just so we kind of get used to being more in a listening mode. And for both audiences, it really is I think an interesting experience, because we're not used to experiencing dance and theater in a more like tactile and audio way. Yes, so I think that both people who are sighted and or not, they usually enjoy the experience for different reasons. But also people from the blind community told us it's really nice for them to bring their family members or friends to experience this with them, so that they can also you know, experience an art form without vision and share a little bit what it's like for them.
That's very interesting, because often we forget that, you know, somebody is telling the person who's got low vision or no vision what is happening on stage. So it's sort of like the tables are turned, right? And
absolutely. And in this way, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you finish your thought. It's okay.
No problem. It's also that the show was completely designed that there's no audio description. Everything, like the performance, is designed so that it doesn't need, everything is said or designed audio, or, you know, there's olfactive stimulations, and so no one is missing out on anything. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. That's always good to hear. You know, I'm thinking of the theme in terms of the story that you've put together for this experience, and how it's dealing with loss and being vulnerable. And that's also part of what you're asking us by joining the performance. Have you, what are some of the special moments that you can maybe share in terms of, you know, what it's like for you as performers, and also reactions you're seeing from audience members?
Absolutely. I know that some audience members have told us that they feel that they're sometimes alone with the cast or the characters, you know, like because you don't see the other audience members. It brings you, it's a very introspective experience, because also when you have your eyes closed, it kind of allows you to connect with some of your inner feelings and other sensorial experiences that sometimes we use second, you know, like we don't necessarily. So for a lot of people, it's quite touching, and it's emotional. So for the cast as well, you know, we're there to accompany people through it. There's a lot of funny moments as well. It's not a heavy show.
Right.
But sometimes people are surprised of like, oh, it brought me back to this memory of my life that I kind of forgot, but this smell kind of awakened this, and I was not ready for that, or I didn't expect that. So there's beautiful discoveries that we find together, and our performers, you know, they were trained to guide people who are blind, so they're really we're really into a caring mode, and also looking for safety of everyone during the performance. So yes, so we're kind of going through that journey all together, and it's a nice communal space. Absolutely, it's quite intimate. Most of the time, the spectators and the cast like to talk a little bit after, because they created the connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely sounds like that, especially when you describe that we have, as audience members, we get a performer, like almost like one-on-one. So it sounds very intimate in that setting already. You know, I'm wondering in terms of what happens next. So you're in Toronto for a few performances. I'll be sure to put the links so people know where to get their tickets. But what happens with this performance? Are you going to continue with this bilingual sort of edition? And are you also working on other things?
Yes, both. So we're hoping, you know, we invited a few presenters to attend this performance with the hope to, we don't have anything scheduled right now for the future. But now that the show is available bilingually, and we also downsized a little bit the technical needs on the cast, so we can tour with you know, quite a small team, and we're very efficient that way. So we're hoping, it's our first time presenting it outside of Quebec. So we're ready for like our international tour, and we we are also working on a new creation. We started developing it in 2021, and now it's called, it's provision, you know, it's a working title. We call it Fragments for now, but it's another show with the same concept. The idea is that it's immersive, multisensory, and it involves all of the audience senses except sight.
Right.
So once again, we're working in dialogue with the community of people living with low vision to develop it, and people who are sighted will be blindfolded. So it's we're going with a different story, instead of taking the audience through the set, like we did for the original version of Camille, we want to transform more the space around them. And you know, we love the intimate one-on-one, but I'm trying at the same time for this new piece to be able to welcome a little bit more audience members, so we could share the experience with more people. Yes.
Right. That sounds really interesting, and it kind of makes me think of, because you also teach, you're also part of being, you know, educating the next sort of artists that come up. When you talk about this type of theater or immersive performances, what's the feedback been from people who are up and coming in their career? Is there an interest in this? Do they see the benefit in learning some of the techniques that you're using?
It's a good question. We have given a few workshops, and we're also giving one here in Toronto next Saturday morning at 11. And it's interesting to see people, usually for people, it really transformed their way of looking at the art that they're doing, And it's inspired, like our choreographer of Camille also developed their own piece for people living with low vision. So I know that some people are inspired by how we look at being visually impaired, not as a handicap, but more as an opportunity to create a new art form, to also revisit their own practice. I'm not aware yet of like people who have. I've been in the United States early this week to work with a company in North Carolina called the Shali Dance Works, who now also creates theater pieces and dance pieces that are completely accessible to a blind audience. So I'm starting to people start to reach out to us for consultation. So yeah, there's a lot of interest and for accessibility right now, and I think it's really essential, and it's great that it's a hot topic right now.
You read my mind, because that's what I was going to say. It's a hot topic, but it's also another way to include people of all ages in the arts, right? Because it's not just about having ASL interpretation, it's about bringing the art so that it can be enjoyed by everybody.
Absolutely. And it's nice for us to think, how can those tools to make art accessible become part of the artistic experience, rather than I mean, every way of doing it is fine, but for me, that's particularly interesting, is how can we integrate that in the art form? On our end, we're also looking at making our shows accessible to people who use mobility aids. So this show now, Camille in Toronto, is accessible to people using a wheelchair or another mobility aid. But we're also talking with the deaf community. That's a bit more of a challenge, because a lot of the experience is through sound. But I'm interested in how can we, I don't know if we can make it accessible to everyone, but it's interesting to have those conversations and see what are the different realities of different people.
Yeah, and I mean, from what you're saying, it sounds like there are a lot of opportunities, and you're very open. Yourself and the collective is really open to talk about this set of opportunities with people in the actual community. So you're working with communities, so you can also integrate their feedback. It's very exciting. It's very exciting times, I think.
Absolutely, it's really important, and it's also it's an accessibility. It's part of the accessibility process. But I would say it's also essential when you're doing immersive work, because if you want to engage the audience, you need to know what they need to be able to participate. And also we need to invite them throughout the process, because we don't know how they're going to react to what we're proposing. So sometimes to be able for the performers to develop that kind of panel of like or those different options of, oh, if the person reacts like this, then I can do that, or if the person reacts like that, then I can do that. So we need to have a little bit like of different choices, a palette of how can we work with the audience depending on what are their needs. Yes,
absolutely. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I always sign up for immersive experiences because I think it's just something to try at least once or a few times. Because again, it's just about learning how to appreciate art in different ways. Thank you, Audrey, and make sure people are aware that you are in Toronto starting this 10th of May at Theatre Pass Marais. I'll put the link for tickets, but if anyone's interested in the company or the collective and your work, is there a website that we can also make sure to add?
absolutely. It's called Au-delà du Visuel.com. So AUDELA VISUEL.com. And there you can choose to navigate in French or in English. We have different information on our different versions of CAMILLE, and there's a contact tab that you can also click on and connect with us.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you for having me. It was a really lovely experience. Thank you.
Likewise. I'm looking forward to connecting with you at some point over the next few days for the performance.
Absolutely. We will be there.
Thank you again.
Thank you.